Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're venturing into, well, the absolute bottom of the ocean, the Mariana Trench.
Deepest place on Earth.
Exactly. You probably know it for that record, but it's so much more. We're talking about unbelievable pressure, total darkness, and this landscape shaped by just massive geological forces.
That's right. And forget just the depth for a second. Our mission today really is to understand why the Mariana Trench is so critical for scientists.
Right.
And, what future exploration might uncover there.
Yeah.
We're going beyond just the depth record headline.
So for this deep dive, we've looked at findings from, well, the institutions doing the actual research down there, pushing the boundaries.
The ones actually sending probes and vehicles down, yeah.
Okay, so let's start there. Why is this incredibly hard to reach place so important scientifically? What's the big deal?
Well, honestly, the sheer difficulty is part of its value. The Mariana Trench is like a natural high-pressure lab. Yeah, for studying deep-sea ecology. How life can exist, even thrive, under conditions that would just instantly crush most things from the surface.
Okay.
And it's fundamental for understanding our planet's geology, too.
Right.
Especially how tectonic plates interact. We'll definitely dig into that more. But ultimately, it just pushes our understanding of life's limits. How organisms adapt to the most extreme corners of our world.
So it's like peering right to the very edge of what life can possibly handle. And I think I read somewhere it helps us understand how species sort of ended up where they are geographically.
Exactly right. The unique conditions, the isolation down there.
Yeah.
It's led to the evolution of creatures found nowhere else. Just completely unique stuff.
Right.
And studying where they live helps scientists understand biogeography, basically, why different life forms are spread across the globe the way they are. And what's really exciting is that it's constantly changing.
How so?
Well, new discoveries are being published all the time. It's a very, very active research area, a real frontier.
It's hard to picture much human activity way down there, though. It's not exactly a vacation spot. Have we actually explored it much?
Yeah, much is relative given the challenges.
Yeah.
Direct human activity is super limited, but it's been groundbreaking when it happens.
Those famous dives.
Exactly. Those historic missions with specialized subs reaching the very bottom, Challenger Deep. But beyond that, lots of scientific expeditions using robotic equipment, ROVs, AUVs.
Robots, right.
And the trench has also been this invaluable testing ground for the tech itself, testing things designed to withstand that insane pressure.
Makes sense. Build something that works there. It'll probably work anywhere shallower. But I also remember reading about potential future stuff, things that might cause a bit of debate.
You're right. There are ongoing discussions, definitely about deep sea mining, looking for valuable resources down there.
Mining. And the Mariana Trench.
Potentially.
Yeah.
And that naturally brings up a really big question. What happens to that unique, fragile ecosystem if we start doing that? It's a serious debate.
And it's not just about direct activity, is it? I mean, even being so incredibly remote, it's still part of the brain. What threats does it face?
Sadly, yeah. Even the deepest trenches aren't totally isolated. Deep-sea mining could cause direct habitat destruction, stir up sediment plumes that smother life.
Right. Burying things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And pollution is a huge concern. They found plastic waste, shockingly, even down there.
Wow. At the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah. And then there's climate change. It has ripple effects everywhere, potentially changing the deep ocean's chemistry, currents. All these things could have really significant, maybe irreversible impacts. And honestly, the long-term consequences, scientists are still trying to figure that out.
That's pretty sobering, thinking our trash ends up in the deepest, most remote place imaginable. But okay, despite these threats, our understanding is growing. You mentioned recent discoveries.
Absolutely, because it's such an active research area. New stuff is coming out all the time, like identifying entirely new species.
Really? New animals.
Oh yeah, deep-sea organisms with just incredible adaptations to that environment. We're also finding new geological features, getting deeper insights into the whole ecosystem, the web of life down there. Really is an exploration frontier.
Speaking of geology, something that really caught my eye was this idea of serpentine mud volcanoes. That sounds like science fiction. What are they?
Okay, yeah, they do sound wild, don't they?
Yeah.
Let's dig into this. To get it, you need to picture the Earth's surface made of these massive plates, right? Tectonic plates.
Like puzzle pieces.
Exactly, like giant, slow-moving puzzle pieces. At the Mariana Trench, you have a spot where the huge Pacific plate is sliding under the Philippine plate.
Okay, one plate going under another.
Right. That's called subduction. Think of one puzzle piece being forced down beneath the edge of another.
Got it. Subduction. So how does that make mud volcanoes? Seems like it would make regular volcanoes.
Well, it does make regular volcanoes nearby. We'll get to that. But for the mud volcanoes, as the Pacific plate sinks deeper, the intense pressure and heat squeeze out fluids trapped in this rock.
Water and stuff.
Yeah, water and other dissolved chemicals. These fluids rise up and hit the mantle rock above the sinking plate. This mantle rock is mostly olivine and pyroxene.
Okay.
When these hot fluids, maybe some seawater mixed with that mantle rock, it causes chemical reactions. This whole process is called serpentinization.
Serpentinization, okay.
And it changes the original hard mantle rock into a different kind of rock called serpentinite.
Yeah.
It's much softer and less dense.
So the rock itself transforms chemically, and this happens in a specific area, the forearc, between the trench and the volcanic islands.
Exactly right. The forearc is the key spot. Now, you've got this relatively soft serpentinite rock in an area that's also shaking with earthquakes because of all this plate movement. Earthquakes basically act like giant grinders. They break down the soft serpentinite into this fine, muddy slush. This serpentinite mud then mixes with more of those rising fluids.
All right, I can picture that, a sort of underground geological mud mixer. So how does it get out? How does it form a volcano?
Well, it's under pressure down there. And this thick serpentinite mud finds pathways like cracks or faults in the seafloor crust, and it just sort of oozes out.
Oozes, not explodes.
Yeah, more like a slow ooze, generally. As it comes out onto the seafloor, it builds up over time, forming these large mounds. Those are the serpentine mud volcanoes. And they can get huge, kilometers across, hundreds of meters high.
Wow, underwater mountains literally made of mud, but it's not hot lava like a normal volcano, right? It's cold mud.
Generally, yes.
Yes.
It's not molten rock. And the fluids seeping out have a really unique chemistry, often very rich in hydrogen and sometimes methane if there's carbon around. And get this, they can have incredibly high pH, really alkaline.
High pH, wow.
It's a byproduct of the serpentinization process itself. That reaction actually produces hydrogen gas, and that hydrogen is a form of chemical energy.
Chemical energy. So,
Life. Exactly. This hydrogen-rich fluid supports unique ecosystems, tiny microbes called chemotrophs. They don't need sunlight. They get their energy from these chemical reactions.
life powered by rock chemistry in total darkness.
Pretty much. And if methane is produced, other microbes can break that down, sometimes making hydrogen sulfide, which is another food source for bacteria, often living symbiotically with larger animals like clams or tube worms found near these seeps.
So these mud volcanoes aren't just weird geology, they're actually hubs for life, based on chemistry, not sunlight. Incredible. And you mentioned regular magma volcanoes, too. How do they fit in?
Right, the Mariana region is also part of the famous Ring of Fire. Lots of volcanic activity. Those more typical magma volcanoes form differently. As the Pacific plate subducts, it releases water, which lowers the melting point of the mantle rock above it.
Ah, okay. Makes it easier to melt.
Precisely. So parts of the mantle melt, forming magma, molten rock. That magma rises, erupts onto the seafloor, builds underwater mountains, and sometimes even islands, like the Mariana Islands themselves.
So both types of volcanoes are linked to the plates moving, but totally different processes. Mud versus molten rock.
You got it. Both driven by tectonics, but very different results.
Okay, this is genuinely mind-blowing stuff. So to explore all this, the extreme depths, these bizarre mud volcanoes, we need some serious tech, right? You mentioned ROVs and AUVs. How do these things even work down there?
Absolutely. ROVs, remotely operated vehicles, and AUVs, autonomous underwater vehicles, are essential. There are eyes and hands in the deep.
What's the main difference again?
ROVs are tethered. They have a long cable connecting them to the ship, providing power and real-time control from pilots on the surface. AUVs are untethered. They run pre-programmed missions on their own.
Gotcha. And both have to deal with insane conditions.
Oh, yeah. The pressure is the big one. We're talking, what, at 6,000 meters? It's like hundreds of times the pressure at the surface.
Yeah.
Maybe thousands deeper down.
Like elephants on a coffee table, you said?
Something like that, yeah. So all the electronics, cameras, lights, computers have to be inside these incredibly strong pressure housings, usually made of titanium or specialized ceramics. Designing and testing those is a huge engineering challenge.
And it's freezing cold, right?
Yep, consistently just a few degrees above freezing. Doesn't sound too bad, but materials can behave differently, contract or expand, causing issues.
And the darkness. Total black.
Complete darkness below a certain point, so you need powerful lights. But positioning them is tricky to avoid backscatter, lighting up all the tiny particles in the water, like driving in thick fog with your high beams on.
Right. So how do they navigate or see beyond the lights?
Sonar,
Yeah.
basically using sound waves. They send out pings, listen for the echoes bouncing back. That lets them map the seabed, detect objects, figure out where they are. Some even use laser scanners for super detailed 3D images up close.
Sounds incredibly complex. What about just talking to them, communicating?
Another huge challenge. ROVs use that fiber optic tether for instant communication, but those tethers get really complex and expensive the deeper you go. Right now, most deep ROVs are limited to around 6,000 meters, partly because of the cable technology.
So deeper dives need better cables or something else.
Exactly. We need breakthroughs in cable tech, or maybe reliable wireless methods. People are looking at things like how NASA uses lasers to talk to spacecraft. Maybe something similar could work underwater. The water is much trickier than space for light transmission.
Fascinating. Lasers underwater. And corrosion must be a nightmare, too. Saltwater eats everything.
It really does. Highly corrosive.
Yep.
Even with great maintenance, it's a constant battle. That's why they use materials like titanium. It's strong, light, and resists saltwater corrosion much better than steel. Gold would be great for corrosion, but not practical or strong enough. Titanium's the go-to for a lot of deep-sea gear.
So these are tough machines, and they carry tools, right, to actually do science.
Oh yeah, definitely. ROVs are like underwater pickup trucks with labs attached. They can have robotic arms, suction samplers to gently collect delicate creatures.
Like underwater vacuum cleaners.
Sort of, but very gentle. Also cutters for sampling corals, temperature probes for hydrothermal vents, water samplers, sediment cores, a whole toolkit. And increasingly, pilots can actually control these ROVs from shore, not just the ship.
From land. Wow.
Yeah, reduces the time scientists need to be at sea. There's a bit of a time lag in communication, but it's getting better.
Okay, and the AUVs, the untethered ones, what are their main jobs?
AUVs are great for surveys over large areas, mapping the seafloor with sonar, collecting oceanographic data like temperature, salinity, currents using things called ADCPs,
ADCP.
acoustic Doppler current profilers. They use sound to measure water speed. AVs can cover huge distances systematically, building detailed maps or collecting data grids. And a really cool new thing is using them for eDNA sampling.
eDNA. Environmental DNA.
Exactly. They collect water samples, and back in the lab, scientists analyze the genetic material shed by organisms, skin cells, scales, waste, whatever. It tells you what species are present in the area without ever having to see or catch them.
That is amazing. Like underwater CSI. So, looking ahead, what's next for Mariana Trench missions? Are we still just trying to go deeper, or are the goals changing?
The focus is definitely shifting, yeah. Reaching the absolute bottom was a huge milestone, obviously.
Yeah.
But now it's more about horizontal exploration.
Horizontal?
Yeah, mapping the valleys, the ridges, the different habitats within the trench in detail. Things we've never really seen up close before.
Yeah.
Getting a richer picture of the whole environment, not just the single deepest point.
And the hunt for new life must still be huge.
Absolutely. The potential for finding totally new microbes, those extremophiles, adapted to insane pressure and weird chemistry is massive. Studying them tells us so much about life's fundamental limits and adaptability.
Right.
And it even connects to astrobiology. Understanding how life thrives in the trench helps us think about where life might exist elsewhere, like on icy moons with subsurface oceans, places like Europa or Enceladus. The trench is kind of an analog for those potential alien habitats.
Mind-blowing connection. And I guess monitoring the environment down there is becoming more important, too. You mentioned pollution.
Yes, definitely. Long-term monitoring is key. The fact we found plastic down there shows how connected everything is. Future missions could deploy permanent or semi-permanent observatories.
Like weather stations, but underwater.
Kind of, yeah. Tracking changes in chemistry, pressure, seismic activity, even how the trench might absorb carbon dioxide. This continuous data helps us understand our whole planet system, climate, tectonics, everything.
And it sounds like it's not just universities and governments doing this anymore. Private companies are getting involved.
That's right. We're seeing more innovation from the private sector. Privately funded missions have shown as possible, and it can speed up tech development, make exploration more frequent, maybe more accessible to researchers, even documentarians.
So potentially more eyes on the deep ocean.
Could be. It might lead to a surge in discoveries, especially if the data gets shared openly. Of course, it also raises questions. Ethical questions, legal ones. Who owns the data? What about exploiting resources like those rare earth metals people talk about? How do we protect this unique ecosystem? There are international agreements like the Law of the Sea, but they might need updating for this new era of deep exploration and potential exploitation.
Lots to think about there. So the Mariana Trench, it's really moving beyond just being the deepest spot. It's a frontier for science, tech, understanding our planet, maybe even others.
Exactly. It represents so much more than just a number on a depth chart. It's a window into extremes, into adaptation, into our planet's inner workings.
Well, this has been an absolutely fascinating dive, truly. It's just incredible to think about everything we're still learning and everything's still hidden down there.
It really is. And it just underscores, the Mariana Trench might be the deepest physical point we know, but maybe human curiosity, that drive to explore the unknown, that runs even deeper. There's still so much ocean out there waiting.